Hello, welcome to presentation training for 2021 Envirothon competitors, replacing fear with confidence. I'd like to first of all commend you for participating in this competition. I hope you all do your very best and that you learn lots and you'll teach those around you what you've learned. My name is Leigh Prom, and I am involved with an organization called Toastmasters. And if you want to look that up online later, you would go to toastmastersinternational.org. It's a group of clubs throughout the world. More than 100 countries have clubs for Toastmasters, where groups of people meet to practice their communication and leadership skills. And I've belonged in clubs all across the country, from Washington State to Minnesota, Wisconsin, and then co-founder of my club here in Franklin County, Virginia. We are the Franklin County Toastmasters Club, and I'm club president this year. But Toastmasters is just a wonderful organization for helping people with their communication and leadership skills. And our club was asked to help with some training for your presentations. And I had the pleasure of helping back in 2018 with the training, but it was live, which is much different than virtually. And I was also an area judge in 2018. So as we get started, I hope that I will be able to give you some tips and ideas to help you as you make your presentations to the judges. And also, I'll just let you know that while I usually feel pretty comfortable with public speaking, and I'm here to teach you about it, the part and piece that I'm learning more so is how to do all the technology with this, virtual and Zoom. So I have learned a lot in this last year, as I'm sure a lot of us have been, about this. So I just want to let you know that it's a learning curve on both ends for you and myself as well. And I'm looking forward to a good time together now as we get started on learning about public speaking. First of all, I want to start with a little PowerPoint presentation. And I want to share my screen, which I forgot to do before I went to this presentation. And I am not going to get rattled with learning to do this and having to work on different aspects. But I'm going to follow my own advice and not get nervous or rattled, but remember to take a deep breath and remember that I'm among friends. As I've already said, we're talking about replacing fear with confidence. And here are the things I'd like to cover in the presentation. First of all, why is public speaking important? And then what makes public speaking scary? How to overcome the fear of public speaking, and being prepared for public speaking. This is the part where I hope to give you some ideas on your content and delivery for your presentations. The first point, why is public speaking important? You could probably think of a variety of situations, but let's say one might be as simple as making a presentation or report in school. Or maybe you're at a meeting and you're called upon to share your thoughts about a particular topic. Or maybe your employer in the future, or if you're working now, has a presentation for you to make, or you just have to be able to share your views on an area. That's a good time for public speaking. And communicators are really important in the job market. Employers want to know that their employees have good communication skills, whether you clean rooms in a motel and are interacting with the public, or maybe you're a political person needing to speak a lot. But there are a lot of reasons why public speaking is important. And I think that goes without saying. And I know for me, my background with public speaking actually started when I was probably about 10 or 12 years old and with 4-H. And I had to do presentations where you gave a demonstration speech, let's say, and you had your poster boards up. I don't know if any of you have that experience or not, but that was one of my first experiences with public speaking. And I've had a variety of opportunities to use it since then, including being on the speech team and debate team when I was in high school. So for you, it could be a variety of things for how you'll be using your speaking, but it is important. But I want to share with you a couple of personal examples from my oldest 2 children and what they've learned from public speaking and how it's been able to help them actually in their professional careers and also when they were going to college. First of all, I will show you some pictures of my son, Lauren. The picture in front of the tank is Lauren on his first deployment to Southwest Asia. My son, Lauren, enlisted for the Air Force. Oh, I'd have to think about how long ago that was, but he was 24 and he's almost 32. So he enlisted for 6 years, and this was on his first deployment. And then in the next picture, he is actually talking with his commander of the squadron when he's going through his re-enlistment ceremony for another 4 years. And he's partway through that now. So he's in the Air Force, works in operations intelligence. So basically he gathers up information and reports and gives briefings, little speeches and presentations to, it might be a small group of high-ranking officials, officers, or it might be a large group. It might be a casual, more informal group of new Air Force folks that are getting ready for their first deployment, just a variety of settings. One time he said he even had to give a briefing in a gas mask as part of a training exercise. And he's had a lot of opportunities to work on his briefings, and including that might be the flight crews that are going out when they're in the desert or on a deployment somewhere. So he's really been able to use his public speaking skills as he analyzes information and communicates that to others. And of course, you want to do that very clearly when you're working in that field. And the picture with his dog Rocco is just for fun. Next is my daughter Crystal. And if you look carefully, can't really tell, but she's wearing Virginia Tech shirts in those farm-like pictures. Crystal went to Virginia Western and Virginia Tech for undergraduate and then master's up in Illinois, and then in May got her PhD from Michigan State University. And the easiest way to explain what she does is working in dairy nutrition. So she advises dairy farmers up in the Milwaukee area, she lives in Wisconsin now, about the best way to feed their cows. And there's a lot of science that goes into that. And so she had many years of studying, but she says that her public speaking really came in handy, the training she had growing up, for when she had to give presentations in college, and then now in her work out on the farms and the people she meets and all. She has a variety of presentations to make. And the bottom slide is Crystal with some of her graduate student workers. And she was the mentor for these young ladies as they were learning about their presentation skills. And they all placed, as you can see. And the one picture up in the overall bibs, Crystal got behind a cow going into a chute, and it decided to, just kind of poop all over her. Anyway, and then the other one, the cow is getting a catheterization for a glucose tolerance test. So anyway, any of you that are interested in egg things, you might understand that. So a little bit about my kids, and they got their start with homeschooling. So they used to go to Toastmasters with me also. So I hope that you're inspired to want to learn more about your public speaking. I know you'll do great on these presentations. Now let's get back to, okay, all right, okay, here we are again. Okay, so we talked a bit about why public speaking is important and some examples of that. Now let's talk about what makes public speaking so scary. And if we were together in person, we'd have interchange and feedback where you get to answer some questions and we'd have discussion and dialogue, but obviously that's not possible at this time. But I was going to ask you, think about this. Do you know that there is actually a term for the fear of public speaking? It's called glossophobia. And it's actually referred to as a medical condition when people are so afraid of public speaking. But what makes it scary? There are a variety of things. Perhaps you'd be afraid of being judged or seen in a certain way, or embarrassed, afraid you might make a mistake, forget what you're going to say, just freeze up and blank out. Or maybe that you wouldn't know how to answer or respond to a question. So those might be some of the reasons that you'd be nervous about your speaking, or maybe you haven't prepared, and then you might very well be nervous. But the best way to overcome fear is with preparation. And that's why we're having this time to talk about public speaking skills. Because if you are prepared, then you shouldn't have much to fear about. But speaking of fear, I just wanted to add an aside. It's okay to have a little bit of nervousness. It's actually kind of good, because if you didn't, you'd be so cocky and full of yourself that you wouldn't come across in a humble but confident fashion. So some of my Toastmaster friends refer to this as having your butterflies fly in formation. So that might be our goals. Just get those butterflies flying in formation. So when you're prepared, that should obviously give you more confidence. Something to think about too as you prepare is preparing your mind, your thinking, and that'll help your confidence. But think about your audience. Remember that your presentation and what you have to share is for those people before you. So if you start to put the emphasis on them and not so much yourself, that should help with some nervousness right there. And remember, your audience, the judges or whoever you're with, wants to see you succeed. They want a good presentation. Or if it's in an entertainment realm, they want to be well entertained, but they want to be informed. And that's what you're going to be doing in your presentations. They're on your side, so just remember that. So as you get prepared, there are a couple of areas you want to think about: the content of your presentation and the delivery of your presentation. Now, when you talk about the content, it's a good time to talk about the judging criteria. And I trust you all have seen or will be seeing your judging forms. But there are a number of points to be made on the 100-point scale. But a few things I'd like to emphasize would be the organization and delivery of your presentation. Obviously, you want to have a good introduction, your main points with good transitions, and then a strong close to what you're going to be sharing. And also, you want to have it be well delivered in terms of your voice and other things that we'll be talking about in a moment. And more than ever is the PowerPoint presentation. This isn't something that you would have had necessarily in the past, but it'll be more important now. I know in the past when I saw the students doing their presentations, they would have poster boards and visuals that you could see right there when you were in person with the presentation. But obviously you can't do that virtually. So this time around, your PowerPoint presentation is going to get double the weight it usually would have. Otherwise, you would have been scored somewhat on question and answers, how well you respond to those questions. So your organization and delivery are important. And also your points will come up with how well all the people in your group participate. Do all 5 participants participate and fairly evenly in the amount of information they share? And you want to get in on that time limit, that's 17 to 20 minutes. So these areas are things that you have control over. So you want to get all those points that you can. And then of course, the rest of your presentation you have prepared and worked hard to do that. Looking at, I know I have a sheet of your kind of informational sheet about the presentation, that idea of creating drinking water awareness and outreach campaign focusing on your school. So just remember that besides the questions and the different points you're supposed to cover, remember that you want to answer the question overall is, why is the drinking water quality an issue? And how we just can't take our water quality for granted. So kind of keep those ideas in mind as you're giving your presentation. Don't forget your 3 key messages. For instance, might be turning off tap water or dealing with litter in terms of how that affects water quality. But just have your 3 key messages out. And remember that what you have to share is important, because right now someone else is making decisions about water quality and awareness of water quality. But just think, it won't be long before you will be those citizens that will be making these decisions. So as you think about what your project is about, you realize how important it is and how relevant it is. So as you present representing Dogwood High School, I hope you will be able to articulate what it is that you want the students and faculty and the school board, as you present them, to be aware of, and figure out how you're going to stage your outreach campaign, and make sure that you have a plan to evaluate the effectiveness of your campaign as well. So your project sounds really interesting. I look forward to hearing more about how the competitions are going this year. So that's the content area of your presentation. Now, for your delivery, you want to be professional, respectful, and have smooth transitions. The students I was most impressed with before, when I saw presentations being made, were ones where the students introduce the next one coming up. So they might hand it off and say, now Ryan is going to have a turn, or however you would say that. And then when he was done, he would introduce the next person, let's say. But just that sense of professionalism. You say, now here is Andrea to talk about that. So you just hand it off and have smooth transitions from segment to segment of your presentation. Eye contact. And that's a whole different thing with the camera and virtual on Zoom or whatever platform you'll be using as when it is live. One of the things I'm personally trying to work on is looking up at the camera more at the top of my desktop computer as opposed to straight on. So that's something different to work on. And notes, normally you would want note cards would be an example, and to not be real noticeable with your notes in person. And then when you're virtual, it's kind of hard. You're not going to see somebody holding their notes per se, but you might have to glance down. So the better prepared you are, the less you'll have to look down or look at your notes. So preparation is important. You want good eye contact because that shows sincerity and that you understand your information and you want to share it with the people that you are presenting to. Another aspect, besides eye quality, eye contact, is, well, gestures is one that we'll get to in a minute, but vocal variety. Your voice is really important. That's your biggest tool for the most part when you're giving presentations. You want to be audible, which means understood, and you want to be loud enough. You don't want to be overbearing and too loud, but you don't want to be so timid that you can't be heard. So you want a pleasant speaking voice of the right volume. Some of the other things to think about with your voice and vocal variety are the pitch. Are you going to speak in a high voice or is it going to be lower? Or the rate. Are you going to speak faster to make a point or slower if that's the nature of the presentation and what you're talking about? But you want to alter it. So some fast, some slow, some higher pitch, some lower pitch. Makes it interesting what you have to say. Now, granted, each of you will have about 3 minutes and you have pretty much technical information for the most part to convey, but still, the more you can vary your voice, the more interesting it will be, and you'll have a better opportunity to get your point across. Another thing about your voice is the tone. You want to alter the different ways you're speaking and not speak in a monotone. Monotone, you just talk the same way for your whole talk and it can be very boring, blah. So add some vocal variety to that. Also using pauses. Don't just talk all the time or fast all the time or slow all the time, vary it. And if you have a pause, that's fine because it gives your audience a chance to think and catch up with you because sometimes they can't process things as fast as you are sharing them perhaps. Plus a pause can give an effect, makes somebody think and stop and gives more emphasis to that particular point. Plus a pause and a deep breath, like I tried to display earlier as I was getting my technical items worked out, is a great way just to calm your own nerves. So just pause. And that brings us to a great point, filler words. Sometimes a pause is much more effective than saying, and, so, you know, and that type of language. So you want to be able to just stop and be smooth in your presentation without having a lot of uhs and ums and ahs. Once you get listening for those filler words, they can be so distracting. And if you start counting and paying attention, you would be amazed how many you will hear people use. And then perhaps even yourself, if you start to count. That's one of the things we do in our club meetings is we tactfully count the ahs and ums. And another thing too is your grammar. You want to have good, clear, not only diction and articulation, how you speak, but the way in which you use words. Make sure you have your subjects and verbs in the right tense and little things, details go in order. You don't want to say, me and Joe are going down to the farm tomorrow, Joe and I, type of thing. So just watch your grammar and the filler words as you're talking. And gestures, how you use movements with your hands and arms and body language. That's going to be a lot different and more curtailed, obviously, when you are sitting giving your presentation on Zoom. as opposed to when you're standing in a live group. But try to use gestures as well as you can. Maybe do a little bit with your hands, but just so that you're not just there still all the time. So gestures can help explain and add to what you have to say. I want to say, though, with gestures, especially in a time when you're more live in your presentation, let's say, they should be natural and normal and enhance and add to your presentation. I always say they should enhance and not distract and detract. It's kind of like a woman that wore too much makeup. It just is too much, over the point. So you don't want to overdo your gestures, but just enough to add variety and some emphasis to your presentation. And the setting, you want to think about what you're working with when you give your virtual presentation. So I happen to have a screen behind me, and if I moved it, you would see a wall of a bulletin board with papers all over it and maybe some antlers behind that. So that can be rather distracting for some people. So think about the background behind what you're doing in your setting, and also your lighting. That can be tricky. I know in the room where I'm presenting, and it's in the evening time when I'm putting this together now, but it's next to a great big window. So during the day, it's bright, but the way the light is, it casts shadows on my face. So that can be an issue. And any time of the day or the evening, I need to add some lighting in front of myself. So I have this lamp in front of me, and I'm going to give you an example of what happens when I turn it off. So you see how dark I am. So that's something you want to check out ahead of time, is your lighting and your setting behind you. And also allow time to get comfortable with your technology as you're working on your presentation. And also your clothing. Now, you really don't see so much of someone when they're sitting down, but you don't want to be wearing a distracting t-shirt with some kind of wording on it, or be less than modest, let's say. But you want to be tastefully dressed in a way that's not distracting, and you want to be professional enough in your presentation as well. But I don't know that it has to be suit and tie necessarily type thing. And if you were to have a question and answer time, which in real life you would have that quite often, you want to listen carefully to the question and usually repeat it as you are starting to give your response, so that you know that you understood the question and they can correct you if not. So just answer it the best you can. If you don't know the answer, don't lie or make something up. Say, I don't quite know about all the details. And you may or may not have an opportunity to tell them more in your situation. But anyway, the point is, you just want to be straightforward, and again, take those deep breaths and just gather your thoughts and listen carefully to the question, and try not to use ahs and ums as you respond. So it's kind of like an interview. But that's a bit about the question and answer. But if you know about your topic, which I'm sure you will, I'm sure you would do well in a question and answer session. And again, as I've said before, nerves, take a deep breath, slow down, collect your thoughts, and remember that the audience is on your side. We've talked about why public speaking is important, why it's scary, what you can do to overcome that fear, with the primary point being preparation. And as you prepare to work on the areas of content and delivery. I wish you well as you give your presentations. And I want to encourage you to sell, sell, sell. That is, get your point out about drinking water awareness and an outreach campaign to your local high school. And I trust you'll all do wonderfully and learn lots, and your points will be well received. And I wish I could be with you to do questions and answers right now in public speaking, but hopefully through your club leaders, your sponsors, however your leadership works, they can funnel those to me and I can be able to give some responses back to help you all out. So again, overcoming fear brings confidence. Best wishes to you all. Bye-bye.